This video is Radical Economics 101. Radical is in the original meaning of the word radical, root. Let's get at the root. Come on, let's take 5 minutes to try and understand the fundamentals of our economy. First of all, how many of you remember the Great Depression? That's what I thought. In 1929, our economy collapsed as a result of a bubble that had been building up throughout the 20s. Our government did nothing for over 3 years, and this led us into the Deep Depression of the 1930s. We'll get back to this. Let's first of all understand that our economy consists of 3 basic parts: business investment, consumer spending, and government spending, which ought to be considered as an investment because that's what government spending is. It's an investment in our infrastructure, it's an investment in our public education, and hopefully it will be an investment in clean energy for the future. Consumer spending accounts on average for 70% of our economy. But right now, consumers, most of us, have no money left over to spend, which means businesses are not investing and hiring. They say that it's because there's no demand for their products. This is a problem of demand-side economics, which, by the way, libertarians said couldn't happen. This leaves government. Recent headline read, "Businesses say they are canceling plans for investing and hiring, in part because they fear that some $100 billion in federal budget cuts will take effect in 2013. So it turns out that federal spending is important to the economy after all. It is the gridlock in Washington and the failure of the grand bargain last year, the inability of our politicians to compromise and come to some agreements to solve our problems and move this country forward, that leaves businesses standing on the sidelines. Let's go back to the Great Depression in terms of understand it, not in terms of getting there. Because if we aren't careful, we may get there, and many of us are worried that we're going to at least go into a double dip recession. It was the government spending programs of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who took office in 1932, that began to build some of the infrastructure in this country. It put people back to work and kept them from the brink of starvation. Now, there are many Republicans today who want to rewrite history and say that Franklin Roosevelt's programs didn't get us out of the Depression. It was World War II that pulled us out of the Depression. But what was World War II? In economic terms, it was the biggest government spending program in history. Who do you think paid for the military equipment? Who do you think paid the soldiers' salaries? And then after the war, we retooled the structure of our economy for a peacetime growth. This is when we began to rebuild our infrastructure, our public education. This is where we began to address what William James called the moral equivalent of war. And if we're going to fight a war on poverty, if we're going to fight a war to have a better public education system, if we are going to build an infrastructure for clean, sustainable energy in this country, we're going to have to put some money into it. Hopefully businesses and government will come together to build this infrastructure. But we do need to understand that what America is facing is the moral equivalent of war. We address these issues at advocatingdemocracy.com, and we ask you to join us and provide your feedback. You can also find us on Facebook.